to the Daily Ascent. I'm Molly Carmel, and this is the podcast I always wish existed, a bite-sized, on-the-ground spiritual note that can shift your thinking and your outlook on life to help make us all a little bit more awake, alive, and ascending. So I was just on a trip to Lourdes, France, and I want to tell you about something my friend said to me right over the Atlantic that was just so helpful. Just five simple words, and it literally changed my flight. And I actually think the course of my entire trip. So I was on my way to Lourdes, really long flight, New York to Paris, and I got really lucky with my seat. I was psyched about it. My friend was right in front of me, and the middle seat was empty. I mean, when does that even happen? I was like, this is an omen. This is an omen. I was like, you know what? This is going to be a pretty great 7 hours. And then a man sat down in the aisle seat. Fine. Didn't think I was going to get all three. All is well. Flights are full. People sit in seats, but we still had the middle seat open, so this was wonderful. Except this man started coughing, sniveling, sniffling, drizzling, and like the entire flight, not occasionally, like continuously. And I could feel the spiral start immediately because, this was like I was looking forward to this trip so much, and I was going to the sacred pilgrimage site, and I was preparing for months. And now I'm sitting not next to, but very close to this man who's going to get me sick, and it's all going to be ruined. And this is all before it even started. To say I was not in my wise mind was a gross understatement, Ascenders. I want to be very clear about that. So at some point, I got up to use the bathroom, and I omen, ran into my friend Karen in the aisle, and she was coming out of the bathroom just as I was arriving to the bathroom. And I said to her, in the way that you say things to people when you're catastrophizing at altitude, I was like, oh my God, Karen, that guy, he's been coughing the entire flight. What if we get sick? And my friend Karen, she's just like a stoic mofo, you know what I mean? And she just looked at me straight in the eye and she said, very simply, very calmly, we've decided he has allergies. That was it. We've decided he has allergies. 5 words. And honestly, something in me released, literally. Something in me was like, okay. Because I realized in that moment that I really had a choice. I hadn't been exercising, right? I was treating the coughing man as a fact. Like I was treating it like a fixed, threatening, inevitable fact. When actually, what I had was a coughing man and a story, a really negative story I was telling about said coughing man. And Karen had looked at the exact same coughing man and told herself a completely different story. Mind you, her story as plausible as mine, arguably more plausible. So I decided to get on the allergy bus too, right? I went back to my seat, looked at the man, and decided he had allergies. I got to work. Well, I actually got to sleep. And I landed in Paris, and I had a really, really great retreat. And there we have it, right? I want to be really honest about something though, because I don't know. I never want to play the spiritual bypass game on the Daily Ascent. It's also probable this man had the flu, this man had COVID, this man had whooping cough. Like, I don't know. And maybe I would have gotten sick regardless of what I decided about him. But here's what I believe, and I believe it with everything I have. I put myself on a different runway. Like I chose a different lane, and traveling in that lane with my nervous system settled instead of activated, with my mind calm instead of catastrophizing, did give me the best possible chance of arriving in good health. That deciding mattered, even if I can't prove exactly how, right? And so that brings me to our pocket sage today. Ascenders. This pocket sage, it's almost like there is no story I can tell you that would fit the amazingness of our pocket sage today, Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Have you not read this book? Because I love for you to listen to the whole podcast, but I think you need to stop listening and you need to go read this book or listen to this book. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist and a Holocaust survivor, and he spent years in Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz. And he wrote this book 9 days after his liberation. And it's, I think, I have the chills telling you this, one of the most important books of the 20th century. And really, what he discovered in the camps under the most unimaginable conditions a human being can face was this: that the last freedom that can ever be taken from you is the freedom to choose your attitude. And so here are two passages. I can't just give you one, it's too good of a book. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And it's not freedom from conditions, but it is freedom to take a stand toward the conditions. Let me read both of those again for you, for those of you in the back. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. It's not freedom from conditions, but it's freedom to take a stand toward the conditions. And, Karen took a stand on those conditions with her 5 words, and then so did I. So today's word of the day is deciding. Not decided, not past tense, not done, not finished. Deciding, present, active, ongoing. Because this is not something you do once and then it's handled. It's something you're constantly doing in every situation that comes at you, whether you know it or not. And so the coughing man on the plane is deciding for you, if you let him, that traffic that you're sitting in, right, when it's not moving, and even without realizing you've already decided that this means you're going to be late and the day is going to suck and everything is going to go wrong from here. You've decided that, right? Or the thought you can't stop replaying from the conversation yesterday, it's deciding that you've run it back 6 times and each time you decide a little more firmly that you know what it meant. Or you've decided that you know what they think of you, or you've decided that you know how this is going to go. When you're not consciously choosing your attitude toward the condition of your life, the conditions choose for you, and they are not gentle about it. And so deciding is the act of taking that back. Deciding is the act of looking at a situation, whatever it is, and asking, what do I want to decide about this? And by the way, not what is certainly true, and not what is the most catastrophic interpretation, and not what my nervous system is immediately handing me, just what do I want to be deciding? And Karen, my beloved Karen, decided he had allergies. That was an act of deciding. Small, quiet, completely within her power, and it changed everything for both of us. And so here's what I want us to be thinking about today. You almost always have more choice than you think you do. Not about the outcome, but about what you decide it means. And again, ascenders, this is not toxic positivity. This is never toxic positivity. I want to be really careful here because I think this particular kind of teaching gets really misused. So I'm certainly not saying that if you just think good thoughts, bad things aren't going to happen to you, right? And I think, good and bad's a pretty weird way to think about things anyway, right? The truth is this man on the plane could have had whooping cough or COVID, who even knows, right? And deciding he had allergies was definitely not a guarantee that I wasn't going to get sick. Life doesn't work that way, and I'm not ever going to tell you it doesn't, or that it does, I mean. But what I'm saying is something much more specific, and I hope more honest than that. Between what happens and how you respond, there is a space. And in that space is your freedom. And that's what Viktor Frankl is. Well, he's famous for a lot of things, but I think he's really most famous for that because that's what he really discovered in this concentration camp, in the conditions of suffering that made a coughing man on a transatlantic flight look like nothing at all, right? What he found was that even there, even in that, the last freedom was his. The freedom to choose his attitude was his very last freedom. and to take a stand toward the conditions rather than be flattened by them. And I think Karen really exercised that freedom in the aisle of a plane, right? Going over the Atlantic Ocean. She looked at a coughing man and she just made a decision about him. And not because she knew he had allergies, she didn't know any more than I did, but because she understood in some instinctive way that she got to decide. And that deciding was going to shape the next 8 hours or so of her experience and perhaps the next few days of her experience in a way that nothing else could. And I talk a lot on Daily Ascent about how I don't think thoughts become things. I really don't. I actually think that is a spiritual bypass. I think that's toxic positivity. But I do believe that repeated thoughts, when we think something over and over, it becomes a belief. And then beliefs become behaviors. And that is that teaching in the most immediate and practical form. The thought I was repeating, this man is going to get me sick. Oh my God, I spent all this time and money and energy getting there. The trip is going to be ruined. I was saying that enough just in that short time that he was sitting next to me. I was saying that enough that it was becoming a belief. It was integrating into my system, right? And if I had stayed on that runway, that belief was going to start shaping my behavior. The anxiety, the hypervigilance, the bracing against something that hadn't happened yet. I was building the case. And Karen's words gave me the off-ramp, and I took it. So here's what I want to offer you today. The next time you feel yourself locked into an interpretation, a story about a person, a situation, a thing that is happening to you, I want you to ask yourself the question. I want you to ask yourself the question Karen planted in me. What have I decided about this? And is that the only thing that I can decide here? Because it almost never is. There is almost always another lane, another runway, another story, something you could tell yourself that is just as plausible as the story that your nervous system handed you first. You don't have to take your first interpretation of a story. You don't have to stay on the runway of a catastrophe just because you pulled into it. You get to decide. And really consciously deciding, it's one of the most powerful things that you can do with this freedom that you have been given. And so our reflective question for the day, what have you decided about a situation in your life that you might not have to keep deciding? And listen, I am right here with you, Ascenders, taking a stand towards the conditions, choosing the better runway whenever we can, because we rise together. Until next time.